So, hey, let me go ahead and get set up. You're on Lunch Conversations with Randy and Teddy, and I got my act almost together this morning. Our special guest this morning is Karin Tischler, and the conversations about job sharing. Our sponsor for the show is the Elder Law Firm. Elder Law Firm is in Greensboro, North Carolina. They're committed to helping you do the things that you want to do to help your loved ones as they transition into estate planning and elder care planning. Look them up in Greensboro, North Carolina, the Elder Law Firm, 336-396-4551. So cool. Randy, you doing all right this morning?
Hey, I am. I think that we are not currently streaming live on LinkedIn or Facebook. I keep clicking refresh.
So I'll go look for that. Wow. You don't mind.
That.
Go ahead and introduce yourself to our guest.
Absolutely. Randy Wooden with Goodwill Industries of Northwest North Carolina, right here in the lovely, scenic and sunny triad of North Carolina. Beautiful weather today, by the way. It's gorgeous. I run our professional center, and as you might expect, we help folks, well, like the ones on this call and others who probably are in a leadership role or have been, or maybe in a salary role, have a degree, that kind of a thing. Could be maybe even a business owner, somebody that's looking to make a transition back to the cubicle lifestyle. You just never know. But it's a big world. And so we're happy to try to help. We're free and do work by appointment. As always, if you're interested, find me on LinkedIn or make a comment here, and then I'll reach out to you. But just know that we're here to help, and been doing this for quite a long time, and been doing our show for what seems like a heartbeat, but it's been 2 years now. Teddy, and hats off to you and all of the work that you do to help make this a galactic success. And we have had international guests to include today. So we're going to have, do you want me to introduce Karin, or why don't you do that? And then we'll make sure that we, by the way, make sure that folks, if you have questions or comments, I'm the chat guru today.
Yeah. And I'm
going to keep an eye on that.
Facebook says it's on, LinkedIn says it's on, Facebook is failing, but I'll fix it in a little bit, and we'll get through it. So, hey, to those who have never met me, I'm Teddy Burriss. I'm a LinkedIn and a Google Workspace strategist, teaching LinkedIn and Google Workspace's business tools. Love doing that kind of work, helping business professionals, entrepreneurs, startups, venture capital folks, even college students who want to get more value out of either LinkedIn or Google Workspace. And today, Randy and I are getting together and invited Karin Tischler to join us. And the conversation is all about a really cool idea called job sharing. And I think job sharing that Karin's going to share with us is a little bit different than my style of job sharing. My style of job sharing goes like this. Hey, Randy, will you take care of that for me, buddy? But I think Karin's got a different perspective on it. So Karin, would you help us introduce yourself to the audience, please?
Yes, absolutely. Thank you so much for inviting me today, Teddy and Randy. I'm Karin Tischler, and I'm originally from Germany, and I received my BA and my master's in economics in England, my master's from the University of Oxford, and I worked as a management consultant in Europe and the US, and then I was the department head at a Fortune 500 company. And then I did a 180. I became a stay-at-home mom and a homeschooling mom for 11 years in the US and in Canada. And my own experience realizing that there is not a lot of flexible work out there on different job levels led me to becoming a advocate and a researcher, speaker, and writer about job sharing, and founder of Emily's Path Consulting. And also I'm the podcast host of Job Sharing and Beyond.
Cool,
wow.
Cool. Hey,
There's
Randy,
a lot going on there.
I know you got a question you want to ask her about Emily's Path.
Well, I do. I want to ask about that, but I always ask the why question. Why is it that you got doing what you do? Was there a moment in time or a series of moments that just spoke to you and said, you know what, I need to be in this line of work and I'm digging it? What was your why?
So my why is really my own experience and the experience of other professionals, either returning back to paid work or trying to return back to paid work, realizing that the job market at the moment, especially in North America, really is either you work 9 to 5, and that was especially before the pandemic, or you might get a part-time position that might not really fulfill your potential and, align with your own experience and education. And because my background is research, I started to research to better understand if there are already best practices around the world regarding more flexible work. And that is how I came across job sharing.
Interesting. Yeah. And because I think you make a good point that, and I know, Teddy, you're going to explore this a little bit more, the idea that a part-time job is sort of looked down upon, I think, from a monetary standpoint. It's part-time. And so you're not part of the team, and, you're not part of the in crowd. You're just, you work weekends, and it'll hear a little here and there. And I think if I'm hearing you right, you say, hey, wait a second, if you're an employer, you need to rethink this, because there's a lot of talent out there that you may be missing out on for a variety of reasons. And one of those could be just the scheduling aspect. I can't work full time because I have family or I've got other obligations. So looking forward to this. I've had clients ask about part-time work, job sharing, that kind of thing. So I'm really excited to learn more. So Teddy, let's kick it off and get started, and let's learn together.
So let's play the phrase job sharing a little bit, Karin.
Yeah.
What is it, and where did it come from?
Okay, so basically job sharing, like in its most common definition, is you have two or more people who are basically sharing a full-time job, all of its responsibilities. And where did it start? It started actually, interestingly enough, in North America in the 70s, early 80s. And as an example, one of my podcast guests was Professor Reed from the University of Toronto, and he actually co-authored a book about job sharing 41 years ago. So it is not a new concept, but it just isn't as well known. And what I should also point out, often people think job sharing is like, 50-50, and this couldn't be, further from the truth. It is a very flexible method. You could actually have one person working 100% of the time, the other one 50. You could have both people working, 70 or 75% of the time, or you could even have both people working 100% of the time. So it is, it's a very flexible concept.
And there really is no predefined organization of job sharing, except for, I think I'm hearing you say, two or more people responsible for making sure this thing gets done.
That's exactly right. And I think what often is that when people hear job sharing, they get concerned because they're like, I've got now two people and I have to do the work for two people. But really, the importance is that these two people are responsible for the job. That means between them, they figure out who does what, how do they communicate with each other. So in reality, a manager of a job sharing pair is actually going to do less interaction or has less work, because the first sort of area of conversation is between that job sharing team. If they have a question, if they're having a challenge, they will, figure it out. They have a sparring partner. And if it's something maybe they cannot figure out, then they will go to their boss. So it actually is a concept that, once it's running well, will require less work for a manager.
Oh, I get it.
I kind of wonder, Teddy, if I might, I wonder, and this may go more to the accountability factor or the whatever. So let's say Teddy and I are job sharing,
Well, that's going to fail miserably.
Anything that goes wrong, it's Teddy's fault. Look, man, Teddy's not pulling the weight, and I'm having to take care of the, all this and that, and Teddy's just, riding on my illustrious coattails the entire time, or vice versa. So, how do we referee that? how do we sort that? If I'm an employer, if I'm a manager, I'm saying, listen, who's accountable here, or do I fire both of you? How do we work that out?
No, that's a really, really good point, Randy. And I think one of the biggest aspects of job sharing is the two people, they really need to trust each other. And that's the biggest thing. And the ego they may have is not the ego about themselves, but about doing the job well. So they really have to work as a team. If, what you just described, one person, person B did this is not going to work well in the long run. So up front, it needs to be really done, well established who does what when, and, what happens, because to your point, it could be, say, I'm putting together a presentation and my partner the next day is actually presenting it because it's my day off. So I have to trust that person can do just as good of a job presenting it. And if there are a mistake, if there is something, we both have to be responsible for it. Yeah.
We both have to own it.
Exactly.
Yeah.
All right.
So go back to and to help us describe the difference between part-time job and job sharing. I think we touched on a little bit. One big piece is that you're a team collaborating together, but break that down a little tighter for us, Karin, the difference between part-time and job sharing.
Yeah. So I think right now, especially in North America, part-time is often seen as an entry-level position. Okay. That doesn't need to be the case. In Europe, especially in Germany, there are part-time careers. There might be somebody who's training to do for an Iron Man or Iron Woman and is working on a part-time career basis, is still able to, climb the ladder, but is working on a part-time basis. In the US, I would say from all the research I have done, most of the time, part-time is entry-level position. The big difference in my mind between part-time and job sharing is you have a sparring partner. You together, will actually learn from each other. So you are also able, because of the way currently in North America it is set up, you can do a full-time position at any level together. So that to me is the biggest difference. And because from a employer's point of view, ultimately, it's a full-time position filled by two people. So that could be a manager. And what is nice about job sharing is that, no person is a clone of each other. So if you have a job sharing team, you will have somebody who might be, let's say, stronger at writing, and the other one is stronger at speaking. So you have a built-in coach who may present some feedback, or you're learning something and say, wow, I didn't know that negotiation, if I did this or that might be helpful. The other thing is really that, they both have different life experiences as well as professional experiences. So you both are constantly learning with each other. And then you have that sparring partner, you can brainstorm together. And so it's a completely different, aspect of working. And one of the people I've interviewed said he really enjoys doing it. It makes him happier. He, together with his partner, are managing a team of nearly 200 people.
Mm-hmm. Yeah.
Wow. Yeah. Are there, by the way, just out of curiosity, are there certain types of work, certain jobs? Todd asked this question, certain types of jobs where this may work better than other types?
Well, that kind of plays right into what I was going to ask next.
Well,
thank you, Todd.
I knew that all along.
Okay. So basically, well, when you look at Germany, for example, and Switzerland, they, I would say, have more job sharing currently than maybe in North America. And, there are big companies like SAP, Bayersdorf, also, the German train organization, but also in Switzerland, for example, in the medical field. In Germany, the head of the Green Party is actually a co-leadership. So I would say it can really be done all across. And I always like to quote the job share pair. What they said is, try us. And they thought, well, maybe astronauts, maybe a tricky one to job share. But besides that, I truly believe anything could be done. And, nursing is, to me, a perfect example. While they don't do job sharing per se, they hand over each shift the responsibility for a human person to the next. So, to me, what sort of more dangerous job, so to speak, trying to make sure you're saving a life can there be?
And I got to thinking just a moment, we talk about the nursing thing, and I'm thinking about in education. First, second, third grade, you have one teacher for the whole day, but then as you then move up into higher grades, you have a teacher for English, a different one for math, and they come in. So they're all teachers, but in effect, to teach the student, there are a number of different teachers with different areas of specialization. So I don't know that that's, maybe an apples oranges kind of a thing, but it just got me thinking a little bit about what other industries have done this for a very long time. And I would think teaching might be another one.
And it's interesting, Randy, that you say this, because like in Canada, where I am, I have not seen much job sharing at all. But the one profession I haven't seen it at is indeed in teaching. Mm-hmm. And you're absolutely right. And it was elementary school teaching there as well. But also, it's like the other thing is, like, when you look at it, you have parents, right? Typically, you're co-parenting. And what you were mentioning earlier, how do you avoid that, one person maybe negotiates something maybe with one person versus the other? You just need to look at parenting, where you have to have a common front to avoid, being maybe manipulated. Yeah.
That never happened to me. Never with 4 daughters. So, and by the way, Karin, don't discount the opportunity for astronauts to job share. I mean, I know that these astronauts don't stay up there 365 days a year for the most part. So, they go to Venus and one guy's collecting rocks and he goes back down. Somebody else comes to Venus and collects rocks for him. So I think there's some job sharing happening in the space shuttle as well. So on my satire. Hey, Karin, do this one for me. What's the difference between work sharing and job sharing?
Okay, so I think on the highest level, job sharing, as we just said, is basically having 2 or more people sharing a job, and it's sort of out of their, you can say, free will, because they might not be able to work a full-time position, or, as this gentleman I just said about, they are happier doing this. Work sharing, on the other hand, it has to do when, because of economic downturns, an organization can no longer, have the full-time work that they had previously had. And so what they do then is they basically share the remaining work across the employees. And this is, in different countries, it is worked slightly differently. In the US, I believe not every state does have a work sharing program, but basically it is also, it's a better way than having to lay off people, because it is also in conjunction with unemployment program. So at the end of the day, you are able to have more people staying inside the workplace, and that enables them then, to gain additional experience. And like in Canada, the work sharing program, it also encourages to have people train each other and train with each other. So, it is basically, in my mind, I don't know if you want to call it precursor for job sharing, but it is a form of job sharing because, you might need to learn and understand different positions.
Yeah. And so, let me wrap that up for a moment, Randy. In one of the, in a previous world I was in, I hired 5 people, turned out to be 5 women, and who came to work for me in the accounting department for this company that I was help rebuilding. And all 5 of these employees could do any of the other jobs. Now, we called that cross training, but I get what your point. It's the same idea. Yeah. Randy?
That's kind of what I was getting at. And also this leads to another topic we'll get to later, and that's pushback from employers. Like, why do I need to do this? And we'll get, what are the typical pushback things? But I remember my former father-in-law, he was a union electrician. And during downtimes, instead of somebody being laid off and, the person with the least amount of seniority, typically, I assume that's how that worked. What would happen is that, let's say there are 10 guys on that work crew or whatever, they would each voluntarily take some time off so that the low guy on a totem pole didn't get cut loose. Yeah. And I don't know that that's job sharing, but it's sort of saying, okay, as an employer, we're only going to need this many number of, I'll call it man hours, person hours, whatever. Right. So is the work sharing then saying, instead of keeping 10 people, we're going to now keep all 11, and we'll just lower your number of hours a week? Because otherwise I'm saying, why should I keep that 11th guy when business doesn't dictate it? In this day and age, you're out. Right. So is that you're taking the work of 11 or of 11 and now spreading it out over 10. So everybody's doing a little bit more. Is that kind of the game plan?
Well, so work sharing basically means, so you have typically, because it's economic downtown, you have fewer hours. So you keep the same number of people, they work fewer hours, but during the time off, they are supported through an unemployment program. So in Canada, this is how it works. It basically, there are certain criteria that have to be fulfilled. For example, as you just said, the entire team has to agree to actually do this. Because as you said, Randy, usually it would be probably the most senior people would stay and somebody less senior would be, left. And so if they all stay and they do the work sharing, overall, the most senior guy overall might earn a little bit less in the combination of what the company pays and what the unemployment program will give them. So that's why they need to agree upon. But it enables the organization as a whole to keep the people. And then once, there is an upturn in the economy, they don't have to retrain, they don't have to rehire. So, on a long-term basis, the company is better off.
I'm going to jump in here because you said something that triggered a thought here. So you said some kind of employment program. So in other countries, does the government step in and say, okay, Randy, instead of you making your normal $10 million a year, now you're only going to make $9 million. So we're going to help offset that for a while. Does the government step in as sort of partial unemployment insurance? Is that what I'm hearing to help?
You're absolutely right. It is a form, but each country is different. And I believe that also here in the US, my impression is because not every state offers it, I imagine then that each state has a different legislation on how exactly they handle it.
Yeah, I don't know. Did anybody around here have it? Teddy, do you know?
I don't know. I don't know. I do know that during the pandemic, there was some type of unemployment that, helped you backfill. But I thought that was just, during that period of time. I don't know that unemployment in the U.S. Covers that the way it is now. But then again, I'm not the man. Maybe one of our HR people here may know the answer to that.
Yeah, it's an interesting topic because it would make sense. I'd say, shoot, I'll back out a few hours and I can get offset with what I'll call free money from the government
for a short period of time.
For a short period of time to sit and I can watch Teddy Burriss videos all day long and I can become
worthless,
nearly a brain surgeon overnight.
Yeah.
All right. A lot of stuff going on. So this is really interesting. Teddy, I'll throw it back to you.
So So cool. Work sharing, job sharing. I get that.
Yeah.
All right. So how can job sharing become of interest to employees or help employees who to stay at a company that might be looking for some alternatives?
Yeah, I think that's a really good question. And when you see the headlines, the Great Resignation, having, sign-on bonuses for fast food restaurants because people or organizations are really trying hard and not coming up with employees, or people are moving to different states or provinces because they feel remote work is what they want to do. And so I feel that job sharing is a way to also help people to stay, because when you look at the Great Resignation, especially caregivers, which at the moment predominantly are women, they had to opt out because of a uncertain childcare opportunities, because from the preschool being closed, schools being online, and even now it is not always certain if you have an outbreak all of a sudden your young kid is home for 2 weeks. So overall, at some point, you can, from a mental health point of view, there's only so much you can do. And so at some point, people said, okay, I'm going to have to opt out because, referring back to what we said earlier, at this point in time, a lot of the part-time positions are entry-level positions. So when somebody is a manager or, a professional with a typical 40-hour job, it isn't possible to do this, to do homeschooling, to do care work. So offering job sharing would be a way for more organizations to keep people within their organization, so they save on recruiting costs once, and trying to attract them back once maybe the pandemic is over, the children are a little bit older, or whatever their circumstances might be.
Yeah. And there's a lot of ways I can imagine. There's a lot of ways organizations could use that style of staffing, that style of employment, to accommodate the business need and accommodate the employees who are looking for something a little different. I'll give you a classic example. I don't work full-time. Randy knows daggone well, I never work full-time. And I work even less today than I've ever worked. And so, but yet there's so much needs to be done. I can see Burriss Consulting being open to hiring another Teddy Burriss to do what I do and give me the ability to go down to 2 days a week instead of 3. So, because I'm frontline retirement. I'm front side of retirement. And so I'm looking for opportunities to do less, but I still know the job needs to be done. And so if I could, have a co-Teddy, a job sharing partner would be a pretty cool way of doing it. So, hey, hang tight. It's about bottom of the hour. You're on Lunch Conversations with Randy and Teddy. Our special guest today is Karin Tischler. Lunch Conversation with Randy and Teddy appreciates the help we get from the elder law firm out of Greensboro, North Carolina. I love their statement. Who's important to you and how you plan to honor them is also important to the elder law firm. So if you have family members or friends who are frontline dealing with, estate planning or elder care planning, you need to reach out to the elder law firm in Greensboro, North by God, Carolina. Their phone number is 336-396-4551. And this week, let them know that Randy sent you to them. So let's keep going here. Randy, any questions or thoughts we need to bring up at this point?
Well, just one that I'm curious about, and I think Dean asked the same thing, and it's this: if I'm an employer, people want what they want. Yeah. How's that for being out there? But benefits, specifically health insurance,
yes,
401k, other benefits. Those are things that matter to people. especially those with families and have, whatever. So where I'm going with this is, look, if I hire 2 people at 20 hours a week ish, neither of them are quote unquote full time. So are you seeing any kind of, I don't know, shift from an employer saying, hey, look, you don't have to work full time to get health insurance? I mean, see where there's some conflict there?
Absolutely.
Yeah.
And
help us understand that.
no, absolutely. And I think, again, it depends on the different countries because, in some other countries, you have national health insurance. So that doesn't come up as an issue per se. But absolutely in the US, because it is a much more common thing, if you are a part-time person, you tend not to get health insurance.
Yeah.
But I would argue one of the things is that especially in the situation, the great resignation, this could be a leveraging point. If somebody wants to, get that person and say, like, I've been searching for 3 or 4 months, I cannot find somebody. And here is the opportunity to get a job sharing team and really get, high class professionals. Maybe I can make some arrangement that, they are indeed included, that they could maybe negotiate that they have healthcare benefits. So I think, and it is, is it that person, I don't know, has a partner and that partner already has healthcare, or could there be some type of negotiation? But I completely understand that is something that in the US is probably harder than in other countries.
And this is these are conversations that I would wager across the globe, not just in the US, that organizations have to be having. And that is, what is our benefit package? What's it look like? And do we need to change our benefit package? I had a conversation with a client a couple of days ago who was struggling to hire their new engineers. They're looking for sales engineers and inside sales engineering support people. They're struggling to do it, and I'm like, they're like, what should we do, Tay? Should we raise our salaries? Like, no, don't just think that's the answer. There are other answers that can help you attract and retain talent. I'm not saying you don't need to raise your salaries. Who knows? Maybe that is part of the answer, but that is by no means all the answer. Maybe offering the opportunity of job sharing could be a way to do that. So, and I know a good recruiter, as someone who just posted in the thread that says, I know a good recruiter. But this will continue to be the types of conversations organizations need to have if they want to attract and retain the best possible talent. So, go ahead.
I completely agree. I think in the situation we are today, I mean, any way that one might differentiate oneself from a competitor to attract talent, I think is the key. And, like there are organizations that are offering online babysitting programs to enable more people who have maybe younger children to be able to return back. So, I mean, there are many ways to do that, but I feel now is the time to start, offering more flexible work. And I would say a lot of the times remote work, or at least hybrid work, is pretty much a given at this point. When you look at all the surveys, flexible work is one of the top criteria by which people decide whether or not they're going to work for an organization.
Yeah. So let's talk about flexible work ideas, and why is job sharing not as common in this whole idea of flexible work methods?
Yeah. And that's a really, really good point. And when I talked to Dr. Professor Reed, basically it is what we've addressed a little bit. It's the short-term view of, this is additional cost, this is additional paperwork. How do I deal with, say, to health insurances? How do I deal with, benefits as a whole, rather than looking at it from a long-term perspective? I'm reducing my recruitment costs, because often people, as we just said, flexible work is something people really value. So they are likely to be much more loyal, having that opportunity to, be a job sharer. And so I feel it also that often forgotten is the branding aspect. Mm-hmm. I can give as an example, you look at Zurich, UK, an insurance company. What they did, they added 6 words: part-time, flexible work, and job sharing. Mm. And the idea initially was to increase the number of women to apply for leadership positions. What it actually turned out happened is that across the board, across all job levels and across all genders, they saw a big increase in job applications because people value this.
Yeah. I get it. I get it. There's when you show you're willing to look at new ideas that can benefit all involved, it creates more opportunity. And by the way, that whole idea, Karin, about vacation, I mean, if Randy and I are doing the same job and he's doing, he's a 50% contributor and I'm a 75% contributor. And if I want to go on a vacation, I just say, Randy, I'm taking off next week. And he'll say this: I got it, Teddy. And then a month down the road, if Randy says he wants to go on vacation, I'm going to go, I got it, buddy.
Yes. And absolutely. And I think especially when you look at it now with the pandemic, how it can be uncertain that, maybe somebody gets infected. The ability that somebody can, seemingly, without problems pick up and, continue to work maybe for the next couple of weeks until the person is feeling better again, that is a perfect example of the benefits of job sharing. And then I think the other thing is also often the concern is that a part-time position might not actually end up being a part-time position because, well, what if there is an urgent call from a client or something like this? With job sharing, it really is you don't want to actually, as the second person, intermingle while the other person is working, because that just creates confusion. Yeah. And so it really is, if it again, there are many options, but a sort of a classical option might be the first person working Monday to Wednesday, the second person working Wednesday to Friday. And, so it is certain that the work gets done and that during that free time, that person can really focus on whatever they are doing. And that may not be only care work, because I think often it is still perceived to be, quote unquote, the mommy track. But there are, many reasons that people might be doing job sharing. It might be somebody wanting to write a book, somebody wanting to volunteer, do some educational classes, or have a side hustle. And I feel one thing out of that is that whatever they are doing during the time where they are not in the main job, they are learning something, and then they can apply the skills that they have learned during that outside time back into the main position. So you are basically getting people who are for free, so to speak, for the main employer, educating themselves in a variety of, transferable skills. Yeah. And I feel that's often completely underestimated.
Yeah. Yeah.
Hey, Teddy, there is a question in the chat. I'll try to paraphrase it a bit. So let's say there's a single full-time job that pays $100,000 a year.
I'll do half of that, Randy.
I asked Teddy for about a tenth of that, and he told me come back next year. So, but let's say there's a $100,000 a year job. We find 2 people that can divvy it up. So then it gets into the minutia of, okay, is this one person 75% of the job? So is this more for hourly folks? If I'm doing 75% of the time and the other person's 25%, do I in effect make 75 grand and they make 25, or how do you split that pie? Is it a 50-50 or what?
Well, I think it really depends that's sort of an arrangement up front that they need to decide. How are they going to set it up? And I think a very common method is actually 60%, 60%, to ensure that there is some time that there is an overlap, exactly, to communicate. And the thing is, what I should also point out is that having two people doing job sharing is much more productive than one person. And the reason why, so think again back to our example, Monday, Wednesday, Friday. So right. I know I'm working Monday to Wednesday. So I'm going to put in a lot of work because I know I'm handing over, so to speak, the baton to my colleague. And I want to demonstrate to that person, hey, I've done a lot of work. I didn't just sit there and slack around, and vice versa. That person comes in fresh on a Wednesday when the rest of the world, it's, half of the week is done, getting a little tired. This person comes in with full amount of energy and does the same thing because they know next week they need to basically account for, this is what I have done. And an example is Maggie Piggott in the UK. So she job shared for 23 years with the same person across 7 different jobs. And twice they were replaced by 2 full-time employees because they were so effective. And they actually ended up on a co-CEO level and got a what is it called? The order by the Queen for their work related to job sharing. Yeah.
Yeah. I get it. If you've got a team or partner that you trust and you two know how to click and you know how to communicate, you know how to hand off and all that stuff, you can be far more efficient at doing it. And so, and by the way, I get it. Maybe it is, the switch off is day to day or week to week, whatever. But the switch off could be, I work the mornings, you work the afternoons. There can be lots of different ways of doing it. Whatever works best for the role, the company, the role, and the humans. And I've seen this as well, Karin. I work for a company, or I did some contract work for a company that had co-CEOs. It was a husband and wife. And, you never knew who you were talking to, but you were talking the same language with these two people, no matter who you were talking to, because they were both so in sync with that company that if the wife said something, the husband was behind it. If the husband said something, the wife was behind it, supported it all the way.
Is that how it works in the Burriss household, Teddy? Or
no, I'm in complete control here, Randy. You know that. Oh, shoot, I got to lock the door. She heard that.
You should have whispered that instead, Teddy. No, nobody should.
Karin, let's play with it. Let's look at another impact that this has on organization. Diversity. Not only diversity of race, sex, religion, and all that stuff, but diversity of humans. When you do co-working, you don't get 2 heads that look and act the same. Talk a little bit about how job sharing supports this whole diversity idea.
Yes. And, actually, Teddy, you brought up a perfect example earlier regarding retirement. So one of the aspects really about job sharing is that you can have intergenerational mentoring built in. You can have somebody who might be new or, early in their career, and they could be together with a more experienced person working together in a managerial position that otherwise they might not be able to do that early in their career. And they might, based on their own experience, might have maybe some technical skills that they could teach somebody who has not grown up with Instagram, etc. And vice versa, the life experience for somebody who has gone through decades of managing people, that will be super beneficial. And as I had said earlier, it's your built-in coach, and it goes both directions. And the other aspect is, by doing this, you can create it as a succession planning plus a transfer of knowledge that otherwise, when somebody, say, were to retire, might just completely vanish, and it allows a more gradual retirement.
Yeah.
And then the other aspect, which I love, especially in Switzerland, I don't know if everybody knows this, but they have 4 official languages. So in Switzerland, there is job sharing between different language speaking people. So for example, somebody speaking French as their main language, the other person speaking German. So you would never really be able to create a person that would be as fluent in say, in this case, both languages, as well as maybe the underlying culture.
Hey, Teddy, there's a question or two in the chat. I want to knock one of these out, and I think we touched on a little bit, but let's bit a little more time on this thing. And that's, hey, listen, this sounds like it's great. It's great for employers, great for employees. Why hasn't this taken hold as much in the US as you might be led to think based on what you're telling us?
Yes. And you know what is really interesting? I read this recently. I think in the US, unlike maybe in Europe, there was still very much the identification of a person with its job, sort of like, I work hard and this is my life, versus maybe in Europe, it is maybe more, I work to live. And I feel the pandemic in particular has made people to really think about, what am I doing? What is the purpose? And also from a sort of a more mental health perspective, does it really make sense to work 24/7 basically? And where do I get, is it like, should I be like, when somebody was at home working from home and got to a chance to maybe experience more dealing with their children, they might have had a more of a shift and say, this is maybe something I would like to see continued. And that's another aspect from my perspective that I'm really trying to make people aware. Job sharing is for everybody. And I feel very strongly we need more male role models, in particular on management positions that do, whether that is job sharing, whether that's the 4-day work week, more flexible work, and talk about it to encourage other people that, it can be done and it isn't only quote unquote a mommy track. So I think the pandemic honestly has led a lot of people to really think about what is the purpose. And then you look also at younger generations, you look at Gen Z, and one of the criteria for working at an organization is, how can I add value? How can I learn? And what is the purpose of the organization?
Yeah, I get you. So it's fun to see organizations who want to experiment with new ideas, because you got to experiment. You just can't go, okay, give me the owner's guide on how to do job sharing. You've got to experiment with it and put it in a role and see what happens. And if it works there, experiment with it in another role and then another role. And then, along the way, you keep adjusting because you realize you didn't put the program together the best. And by the way, I would wager, very easily would wager, that communications between everyone is a big part of making job sharing work to be successful. So, cool.
So one more thing, I think what is really important is you have to have an executive or a high, senior manager who supports that and is really pushing it, because otherwise, it will be much harder. And like, you look at SAP in Germany, where every management position is written out as a potential job sharing position. And Carver, the head of HR in Germany at SAP, basically, his motto is just what he said: we are not hard searched. We'll, let's test it out. And, that's, I feel one has to be, willing to test something and see how it works. And, as I referred earlier to the Zurich, UK, I don't think that they expected such an increase of job, applications. But I think it is, from my own experience, it's, in North America, I often felt it is you either work 9 to 5, which isn't really 40 hours, but more like 50 plus, or you know, given your childcare situation, may not be able to work, you know, at all. So it's the all or nothing, versus I feel having that middle ground is something that will help, you know, many people going forward. And, you know, and I think it will help the new generations who have, I would say, different focuses.
Yeah.
Hey, Teddy, I'm going to throw, this is a first in the history of the lunch conversation with Randy and Teddy.
Let's record this. Let's record it.
So, so for those who may have joined partway through and are playing catch up, all right, I want to re-ask a question that was asked earlier. If you could summarize it, because we don't have a lot of time left, but spend a couple minutes on this. And it goes back to this, because I know if I walk into my boss at work and say, "Hey, job sharing, man, we need to look at this," they're going to go, "Well, we have part-time people at work part-time. What are you talking about?" So what's the difference, again, for those that might be joining now? What's the difference between part-time work and job sharing?
Right. So I think from the employer's perspective, having a job sharing team is basically two people fulfilling a full-time position. So versus part-time, you might always then worry what will happen if that person isn't there. So from an employer's perspective, job sharing, you never have the situation where there isn't a person there. It's simply that two people are sharing this job, and together they fulfill its responsibilities. They communicate with each other. They make sure that everything gets, you know, communicated also to, you know, the employees, the, you know, peers, and so on. And by having two people, it allows them to use each other as a sparing, a sounding board, as a sparing team. And so they actually coach each other. They learn from each other. So I would say these are the biggest differences. Yeah.
And I'm with you. And I would also throw out that there are probably lots of part-time jobs out there where, you know, Randy does it the first shift, I do it the second shift, et cetera, different styles of part-time jobs out there that could be reclassified in some way or another as job sharing. And by doing so, you could make those positions more effective, and you can make those positions more productive. And as you know, lots of other conversations that you throw out, you can, you know, have more mentoring, more you know, one-on-one coaching between each other. You know, the team, the cohort that's involved in making this job happen, treat each other at a higher level. There's a whole nother way of looking at that in context to what we call part-time jobs today, I think.
Yeah. But
that's a big shift. And corporations don't make big shifts without understanding the value to them.
Yes.
Yeah.
And I think maybe the other thing is, and this doesn't necessarily have to be the case, but I would say in North America, you know, part-time positions typically are more on an entry-level position. Yeah. Not necessarily, but typically, versus job sharing. You can have also top sharing, which basically means job sharing on a management or an expert position. Yeah.
Karin, this has been good. This is really interesting. I applaud you for being an advocate and working to push this idea across North America. So thank you for being a big advocate for this. You know, appreciate it. So, and I like you gave us a summary at the end there that said, you know, really what is the difference between job sharing and part-time sharing. It's really cool. Thank you very much for joining us today. I really appreciate it.
Thank you.
Yeah.
Thank you so much. It was really, really, you know, wonderful to be here and to, you know, talk more about job sharing. As you can tell, I'm very passionate about it. I feel we need to have that much more across the world. And as I happen to be German and I keep reading, you know, in German, like, you know, you have high-level employees in Germany starting to do job sharing. They are, one headline after the next is job sharing, the, new solution for, the pandemic. I feel this can be also done in North America.
I think it can be. And hey, Teddy, let me work in real quick. And this is real quick. I never did ask you, Emily's Path Consulting. Where did you, and I assume that Emily is a daughter, but I think I'd be incorrect. So what's the genesis of that?
Okay, very quick. So I do not have a daughter. I have two sons.
Okay.
So Emily's Past Consulting basically is based on a mythological story where Emily was a person who was working very traditional, was a very traditional person, and then later in her life decided to become more independent. In this case, she was writing with, everybody. And so initially, I really was focused on returning professionals who might have had a more traditional life and then decided to return back, especially if they had the opportunity to do it through job sharing or some other flexible work. And that's the story behind the name.
So then that's your consulting company. Teddy, I have a story.
Go ahead, man, and then we'll introduce our speaker for next week.
Yeah, well, actually, two little short things. One is that, and again, this whole great resignation, companies have to think outside the box. And the typical full-time, the what I'll call the easy path to search for, we need somebody who doesn't have criminal history, can pass a drug test, has the right education, has the right industry experience, is the right this, the right that, and checks all the boxes. The day of that right now is over, because you're gonna, if you limit the available talent pool to what it was when it was a buyer's market, an employer's market, you're not going to find people. So you have to be a little more creative, whether it's looking at perhaps people that want to work on a limited number of hours, maybe folks with, some level of disability that maybe can't physically work the full 40 plus, stay-at-home parents, the caregiver that can work maybe on a limited basis. So I think it's a great thing for companies to kind of explore alternate paths to finding talent. And I'll share one quick thing, Teddy, and then I'll let you go. And the other is I'm involved with Leadership Winston-Salem. We work on, there are eight people, 7, 8. Is that eight people in a group. And we are working on a project to benefit a local organization. But there is not a hierarchy of you're the leader, you're the this, you're that. And the 8 of us have to figure out how, and we're all drivers, all of us. Well, I'm a slacker. Okay. So 7 of us are drivers, and then there's me. But we had to figure out, how do we make this all work? How do we divide up the work in this? And I think of it really as job sharing, because we're kind of passing the baton back and forth and figuring out, we got to make this happen. And we don't have somebody setting out the rules that say you got to do it this way. So I'll leave it at that. Teddy, take us home.
Cool stuff, man. Yeah. Karin, stay in touch. If I can help you share this conversation with other people, other groups, maybe some SHRM groups might be a good place to take this message, HR management groups. Let me know. I'll be glad to help you. And Wayne, thanks for being here, buddy. Appreciate it. Hey, Randy, who's on next week, dude?
It's a repeat offender. Susan Rooks is back. She's the grammar goddess, straight from Massachusetts. You came from British Columbia. So now we're going to go to the other side of the coast, the east coast of North America. We're going to talk to Susan Rooks, the grammar goddess. If you ever wondered about proper grammar and all that stuff, we're going to learn. Actually, ain't you been following me, Teddy? We're going to learn about crutches and filler words. We all use them. We're going to learn how to avoid using them, or at least how to minimize those. And again, Susan Rooks will join us. That'll be the final show of our month. It'll be on the 27th at 11:55 Eastern time. So we hope you'll tune in and watch and have questions and comments for Susan Rooks. So Teddy, back to you. We'll take it out.
Hey, everybody. Lunch Conversations with Randy and Teddy, sponsored by the Elder Law Firm out of Greensboro, North Carolina. We're grateful for their help. If you have a need to have a conversation about elder care or about estate planning, reach out to the Elder Law Firm in Greensboro, North Carolina. We appreciate their help. Everybody have a great week, and we will see you next Wednesday. Take care, Karin. Bye-bye.
Thank you.
Bye.